Okay, great. I'm going to kick us off here. I think we've got some critical mass. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. Um, Today we're going to be talking about the intersection between higher education and an apprenticeship, and specifically how you work out that relationship with credentializing apprenticeship training. So really pleased that we're joined by our friends at the American Council of Education and their partners from IBM and Purdue. Um, just to set the scene a little bit, why we think this is such an important topic. We were really ambitious on the growth of degree apprenticeships. We think that's, higher education is going to be a kind of key area for the growth of apprenticeships. That's two reasons really. Firstly, if you look at what's going on internationally, we've seen huge growth internationally in degree apprenticeships. I think something like almost 10% of all degrees in the UK were apprenticeships last year. We're a long way off that in the States, but it's clearly going to be a kind of subject to growing interest. And secondly, just from the other perspective, looking at the labour market, we're gonna always have a really high proportion of jobs here that require degrees and credentials. So it's vital we find kind of solutions like this to be able to bring together that world with apprenticeships. Just a little bit of housekeeping up front. We're going to be recording this. We'll send out a link to the recording afterwards to everyone who's registered. We're going to hear from a panel, and then we'll open up for some Q&A about half an hour in. If you've got any questions as you're hearing from the speakers, please put them in the sidebar or put your hand up when we get to the Q&A later. We'll come back to you. I think that's all I was going to say up front. So without further ado, I'll pass over to you, Lisa.
Well, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here and it's with my colleagues and just having the chance to talk a little bit about the work that's being done at ACE as we look more and more into apprenticeships as a very, very valuable on-ramp in recognition for prior learning for these individuals who want to further their education. Maybe not all the way to a degree, maybe to a certificate, maybe to upskill and reskill, but it gives them that extra boost as part of our process. So really, we want to unlock that lifelong learning. We want to make it hungry. We know that students that receive credit for prior learning are 36% more likely to complete. That we know that it gives them that additional incentive. So we want to be sure that we provide every opportunity we can to increase that economic mobility, to empower all those learners to have that additional way in. ACE has been evaluating education that is what we call non-traditional education, so military education training, also civilian education and training, workforce training, and lately, within the last 5 years or so, we've moved into apprenticeships. And what the evaluation process looks like for that is a team of evaluators that are subject matter experts in the field. They've been teaching for at least 5 years. And in the case of an apprenticeship, they have also been instructing or are a master in that field. They will come in and they will spend a good deal of time, usually a week, validating and credentialing. And that all starts with a consultation with the apprenticeship program. We want to take a look and make sure that they have all the documents and things in place that the evaluators are going to need. They put in an application. We do what we call a pre-review readiness visit, where we will go step by step with the apprenticeship program. We will go through and say, okay, we've got to be sure we have this, we've got critical task lists, we've got the on-the-job training, we've got the coursework, whatever it is, all of the assessments, everything we need to have. Then we prepare a team. We organize the team. They come from all across the country because we want to have a national representation when we do our evaluation process. We don't just want it to be local or even regional. So we try to really scatter our evaluators to make sure that we get a good national lens. The advantage to that is it's more likely for our credit recommendation to be applied to a subject-specific credit rather than just elective credit. So we'll assemble our team. We actually execute the evaluation that takes about a week. It includes going through all of the course planning documents, all of the on-the-job training. We also talk to an apprentice. We have an interview with an apprentice, usually two of them, one that's just starting and one that's almost finished, to measure that on-the-job training. We also talk to the instructors or the masters that are working with them in an interview process with the team. Then the team has to come together and they have to come to a consensus on their credit recommendations. So it's not just one person saying, I think they deserve 3 credits and whatever. That needs to be an agreement amongst all of them. And actually, that's one of the most fun parts of the whole review, because you try and get 6 faculty evaluators to agree on anything. You're really doing something there. So we get a consensus that is then published on the National Guide, and the participants who complete that apprenticeship program, those apprentices then receive a credentialing, a badge that says that they have successfully completed it, and these are the credit recommendations that they have earned. This is just a small snapshot of all of the apprentices that we do. And the reason I can't fit any more on there, but I wanted to show some of the diversity. So we're not just talking about construction trades. We're talking about cybersecurity. We're talking about insurance, the Hartford Group insurance, and T-Mobile. And so it really covers a depth and breadth of a lot of apprenticeships. We want to grow that. We want to do more of them to make sure that we, again, provide that on-ramp for those apprentices. Some of the outcomes, in case you're curious, when we evaluated the Electrical Training Alliance for the outside linemen, it was a 3-year program. They earned 54 semester hours of credit and 3 semester hours of what we call vocational credit. Now, when we break those down, vocational credit, we're looking at trade school, maybe a community college, something like that. Lower division is usually 1st or 2nd year baccalaureate, and then the upper division credit, 3rd and 4th year baccalaureate. Occasionally, it is very rare. I didn't have a representation on this slide, but if the depth, scope, and rigor is there, then the faculty will recommend a graduate credit. But it really has to be at that graduate level. There has to be the research and the writing and everything that goes with that. So that's rare in apprenticeships, but not totally unheard of. And as you can see, depending on the length of things will also depend on how much credit is available to them. For instance, the Jackson EMC, 86 credits, but it's also a 7-year program. Whereas other programs which are shorter, obviously not as much time and seat and time on the job, so they're going to have a little less in the requirement. So when we talk about putting your learning to work, we don't really care where the learning took place. It didn't have to be in a classroom. It can be on the job. It can be life experiential. It can be all of these things. We're more focused on how can we translate those knowledge, skills, and abilities that you have learned outside of the traditional classroom into credit recommendations that will help that learner advance and get to the next step, get to the next degree, the next certificate, the next whatever. It has a number of organizational benefits, and we've studied this. We know it for sure. Probably one of the most important is the recruiting and retaining of personnel, because it's much easier to keep a valued employee than it is to get another one. So if we can upskill and reskill, provide additional opportunities for that individual, they're more likely to stay. It will also track the development amongst the team and build those pathways into upper management. How many times do we get a really good apprentice or employee or whatever you want to call it, but they just don't have that additional little bit to get them into that upper management? Here's a great opportunity to do that because it provides them with that on-ramp. So we're excited. We're really excited that this whole process is taking place. We've had some wonderful partnerships, and I'm going to introduce one of them right now because we'd like to welcome Brandy Bowe, who's the program manager at IBM. Brandy's going to share how IBM has integrated learning and learning evaluations into the apprenticeship programs that they have and support their career advancement. So Brandy, you're up.
Thanks, Lisa, and thank you everyone for your time today. At IBM, we really are all about leading the charge in hybrid cloud and AI technologies. We are guided by solid principles like trust, transparency, responsibility, and service. Our U.S. apprenticeship program is a competency-based program registered with the U.S. Department of Labor. And for us, it's more than just an entry point. It's a complete learning journey for candidates who have the right skills, but maybe no degree, or career changers, veterans, right? We started on this journey in 2017. And when we started, we had one role registered. We had 7 apprentices join. And since that time, we've grown to over 1,000 apprentices across 35 registered roles that cover everything from cybersecurity and software development to data science and design. And one of the best parts of our program has been partnering with ACE to evaluate 9 of our apprenticeship roles for potential college credit recommendations. This partnership, it keeps us on our toes. It helps us stay relevant and responsive to the ever-changing tech and business environment. You know, it's not just a win for our apprentices, it's a win for IBM as a whole. It shows that we are industry leaders and we're bridging that gap between school and work. Plus, it makes our apprenticeship super appealing to potential candidates and helps us keep our top talent. Like Lisa was saying, it really has helped us to keep and retain the talent that has come into our program. Our apprenticeship program, it's about an inclusive workforce development. We are merging hands-on experience with formal education, and we're making sure that our apprentices are set up for success in today's fast-paced world. And we were fortunate enough to be introduced to Purdue Global to help us on this journey of recognizing the ACE recommendations. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Allegra Fowler to talk more about how Purdue Global supports apprentices in earning their college degrees.
Thank you so much, Brandy. Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a lovely day. Thanks for joining us today to geek out on apprenticeships and credits and higher ed. It's going to be a lot of fun to engage with this community. I'm joining you from Purdue University Global, which is in the higher education space, the online and adult serving component of Purdue University, which is a residential campus in West Lafayette, Indiana. And the thing that makes us a little bit different as a higher education institution is really our focus on the needs for adult learners. And so this apprenticeship space is really congruent with our academic philosophy and our mission about increasing access to education and really serving the backstory of the learners who come to our institution. So there's a little bit of demographic information that I think really kind of celebrates that point. Our students are older. Our students are often kind of working while they're learning. So we have an academic model that supports that. And my title is the executive director of the Center for Prior Learning Recognition, which is a bit of a mouthful, but I'm really proud of that because maybe not all higher education institutions have an office like mine. And my office, we specifically focus on ensuring, as Lisa outlined, that this learning that happens in diverse contexts, whether it's on-the-job training, something a little bit more formal, like an apprenticeship program, military training, etc. What we're really trying to do on the higher education side is find a way to wrap our arms around all of that learning and position it within the academic higher education context to make the right positive difference for our learners. And so when they come to Purdue Global, it's really an element of taking a look at what they've already done before they got here and figuring out how we can count up all of that learning, how we can quantify it, how we can qualitatively review it so that students don't have to retake courses that they shouldn't need. You know, the example I often use for this that I think is relevant for the apprenticeship space is, you know, somebody who's been working at the local fire department for 30 years doesn't need to take Fire Science 101. They've been living it. But without the tools that ACE provides through those faculty recommended credits, learners are often finding themselves in that classroom, in that Fire Science 101 class, because they don't have a vehicle to get their learning recognized. And so where this journey really bounces is the folks who are working to develop the Department of Labor registered apprenticeship curriculum are partnering with ACE. The ACE faculty are saying, hey, we see some college learning here, and we recommend that this individual receive credit. But where the handoff to higher education is really important is making sure that that higher education institution can see, acknowledge, and recognize those recommendations. And at Purdue Global, we take that very seriously. And for folks on the call, you should know that every institution on the higher ed side does this a little bit differently. And so it really is important for apprentices and leaders of apprenticeship programs on the professional side to understand that on the higher ed side, everybody's got their own rules. And we are so grateful that ACE sits in the middle of that as a North Star that institutions can look to understand the learning that is contained there. At Purdue Global, we actually have an academic policy in our policy catalog that says, you know, recommendations from the American Council on Education will be accepted. And that really is going to impact the ability of that apprentice to efficiently and effectively achieve their academic goals, will not leaving behind those professional goals, either, you know, with IBM or another organization at which they're completing that apprenticeship. And I'll just briefly make one more point from the higher education perspective, is that it's really important on the higher ed side that the recognition of this learning not be an afterthought. And it's something that, you know, we really feel like we're walking the walk at Purdue Global, but we're also trying to participate in broader conversations such as these in order to reach out directly to our higher education colleagues and say, hey, you know, let's share some best practices here, because the incorporation of something like a 3-year apprenticeship program into a degree pathway should not be an afterthought. It should be something that we're thinking about proactively, that we are preparing for on the higher ed side, and that we're setting these learners up for a seamless, successful experience where everybody's kind of playing towards the same mission. We all want the same thing. We want that individual to gain academic mobility. We want them to be successful in their job. And we also want them to get that credential that's going to help unlock new doors in their professional trajectory. So Lisa called it an on-ramp. I think that's an understatement. It is a huge on-ramp that we perceive on the higher ed side to really make a difference for these apprentices.
Well, thank you so much. And I think I'm going to turn it over now to John, or I'm not exactly sure who is going to facilitate a panel discussion, but our panel is here. We're ready to go.
I can facilitate.
Okay.
Lisa, do you mind putting down the slides?
No, of
I'll
course
put
not.
the spotlight. Oh,
There we go.
great, thank you.
Sure.
And Lisa, I was actually gonna start with you.
Okay.
You talked about how ACE started getting involved in apprenticeships about 5 years ago. Can you talk a bit about the thinking behind that? And, you know, why apprenticeships and credit for prior learning have become so important to ACE?
Yeah, absolutely. When we were looking at what else can we do? And again, you know, knowing our history, we started with the military. We then moved into workforce development. We worked into in the 70s or so. We were looking at, you know, corporate training and things like that. And then came along competencies and other things. Where is the next void that we could fill? And apprenticeships came right to the surface. It was almost one of those, geez, why didn't we think of that before? We were fortunate enough to secure some monies from the Charles Koch Foundation to kick off what we called an apprenticeship pathways project. And both Brandy and Allegra were involved in that on two different lenses. I've been walking this walk for a long time together. And what we discovered was the richness of what apprentices learn throughout that journey. We had no idea when we first went in exactly what we would find or if there was going to be anything there. But in looking over, I believe we looked over 12 apprenticeship programs. on that pilot. And we also convened 6 colleges and universities across the United States as sort of a test of, okay, we have these credit recommendations. Would you accept them? And it was overwhelmingly a yes. Now, to Allegra's point, each college and university does things just a little differently. But the climate right now is such that colleges and universities are looking for ways to accept credit for prior learning into their institution. They know that if they grant credit for prior learning, there's a more likely chance that that student is going to complete, and they're looking at completers, they're looking at retention. They also know that while they may not receive revenue from a course that is granted credit for prior learning, they're going to receive more revenue because the student is going to stay. So they're willing to look at those different pathways now and find out how they can best map this and best capitalize on the credit. And Purdue Global is one of the leaders. They have been doing that. They do it so well. And that, props to them because they had to learn the journey too, but they're the gold standard when it comes to credit recommendations. So thank you.
That's great to hear, and it's great to hear how you've started from a pilot and successfully scaled that up and been able to build the evidence of why this is so important. Brandy, I'm going to come to you next with a similar question. Can you talk a bit about what motivated IBM to integrate these learning evaluations with this apprenticeship program?
Yeah, absolutely. As Lisa mentioned, we were part of the pilot. So that really excited us to be involved in such a fun and exciting initiative. Our primary motivation was really to try to bridge the gap between the practical hands-on experience and the theoretical knowledge that the apprentices were gaining. And by incorporating the ACE evaluations, we really aim to provide our apprentices with a clear roadmap toward earning a college credit recommendation. We actually polled our apprentices to find out, what are you interested in? Like, would you want to pursue a degree? And overwhelmingly, our apprentices were interested in pursuing a 4-year degree, even though they were already on board, working, earning a wage from IBM. They still wanted to pursue that degree. So the initiative really wasn't just about offering the academic recognition. It was about infusing our apprenticeship program with a profound sense of value and purpose. And the move really aligned perfectly with IBM's people-focused approach. It shows that we're all about nurturing our talent and we believe in their future. So by letting our apprentices earn those college credit recommendations, we're really giving them a leg up. We're helping to boost their long-term career goals, and ultimately fostering a love for learning. At IBM, we are really all about a continuous learner. So we love it when people are interested in learning and continuing on that learning journey. The integration, it helped serve as a strategic differentiator in today's competitive job market too. So in a time where talent, top talent is currently coveted, our apprenticeship program, fortified with the ACE evaluations, has become a compelling value prop for us. It really sets us apart because it provides us an opportunity to offer a unique blend of practical experience with structured learning and the academic recognition. So in essence, our motivation to integrate the ACE learning evaluation is really rooted in our desire to create a more comprehensive, a more rewarding, and a more attractive apprenticeship experience. It's really about empowering our apprentices, attracting top talent, like Lisa has mentioned before, and solidifying our position as an industry leader in workforce development.
Thanks, Brandy. That's great to hear. Allegra, how about the higher education side of the partnership? Lisa mentioned, the benefit of retention here, but what are the other benefits do you see for apprentices?
Yeah, and thanks for pointing that out. I'm going to start there. I'm going to double down on what Lisa mentioned, because I think that seeing some activity in the chat that, it's really difficult to find an institution that wants to play ball here. But here's my favorite stat to use when I'm connecting with higher ed colleagues and trying to bring them closer to this work is research shows that students who get recognition for something like an apprenticeship program actually take more classes at their college or university because they don't drop out. They stay, they finish the program. And so anybody who's in leadership in higher ed is thinking, financial bottom line, how many students do we have? What's going on? Are there enough butts in seats? But honestly, students who gain learning recognition through these programs are better equipped to be successful in higher education than peers without such a background. And so institutions really, they really need to buckle into those observations and what the research is showing. But as you said, Harry, that's not the reason to do it. The reason to do it is that it's the right thing. We want to get students into classes that are going to advance their knowledge. And learning is already happening everywhere. So learning does not just happen in a college classroom. It happens everywhere. A talking point I like to use on this is, I say to people, what do you think is the largest educator in the United States? And people start listing off big schools, somewhere in California, maybe Michigan's really big these days. It's the military. The military is the largest educator in this country. Now, they're not an accredited college or university, but you want to talk about an organized, rigorous training program that is giving people practical knowledge, abilities, skills. It's the military. And I think that's the kind of stuff that really helps people realize how learning is happening in so many different contexts. And so the other advantage, I think, of using this, Brandy called it a bridge, and I feel like maybe I accidentally sent her my notes because that's exactly what I was going to say here, is that ACE is the bridge to connect these learning experiences from this place that isn't college, university, into a place that is. And it is because it's rigorous, it's authentic, it's faculty driven. And I think everybody wins. I think the student wins because we can lower the cost of achieving a college credential and enable quicker economic mobility resulting from the attainment of a credential. I think the higher education institutions win because students are more likely to be successful. And that's what we want. We want students who are going to be able to succeed, and they're going to get in the right classes. They're not going to be sitting in a class that they don't need and they're disengaged and the faculty don't even know why they're there because they could probably teach the class. We don't want that. And then further, I think the advantage, as Brandy has identified, is that retention and that talent pipeline and the ability to grow from within that this whole ecosystem supports, because we can create an opportunity where when they attain that credential, well, all of it kind of came organically from within. So now we're still within. We're not training folks up because they don't know where they are or where they're going. They know where they're going, and we're just creating a pathway to get them there on purpose.
Thanks, Allegra. There's some great points there. I'd double down on your point on the military. I think we forget sometimes 1 in 6 of our current apprentices are in the military. There's some great questions coming in the sidebar. I'm gonna bring those in a moment. But I want to turn, before we do, to the detail of kind of implementation and how you got this done. Lisa, you had that great slide earlier showing the range of different occupations that you've worked across. Can I ask, how do you ensure consistency and high quality when you're working across so many different occupations?
It's a very good question. Because of the teams we assemble, and remember, we're going to do a review readiness with the apprenticeship program, and we're going to identify those key areas that we need expertise in. We always take what we call power skills, some call them soft skills, but we always take a team of folks who are going to be looking at communication and writing and those types of things, strategic planning, things that may or may not be associated, but we don't want to leave them behind. But then we're also going to take a group of very skilled technicians. So if we're doing an if we're doing IBM, for example, our team is made up of everybody that we can get well, not everybody, but it'll made up of 4 to 5 people across the country that are experts in the field of cybersecurity. So if that's what we're looking at. So that when they sit down, they compare that to not only what is considered the standard in higher education, but what is the standard in the field? Right? Is this level of education and training that's happening at an apprenticeship program, does that meet the level or exceed the level, either one, of what is being taught currently in higher education, and what is the best practice standard for the field? When they come back, the faculty has to fill out a number of different rubrics to validate why they came to the decisions they came to. And they also provide feedback to the apprenticeship program as to why they awarded credit recommendations or maybe not. Maybe there was a gap somewhere that they would have loved to have given 3 credits in something. However, the substance wasn't completely there. So they will provide feedback back to the apprenticeship program to say, we just noticed that as we were going through, there's a little bit of a gap here, and your apprentices would probably qualify from some additional credit recommendations, but we can't do that now based on how it's formatted. We also recognize that apprenticeship programs, much like the military trains to mission. Apprenticeship programs train to the apprenticeship that they are working in, and may not necessarily have all of the general education or what surrounds that. They have the education that's important and supports their learning in that apprenticeship program. So there's a lot of detail as far as the technical aspects of it, but we do also find quite a bit of what we call those power skills that readily transfer. I mean, you have to be able to write a report, you have to be able to code, you have to be able to communicate with other people in your group. You have to be able to write an email that's not 1 sentence long. You know, there's a lot that goes on, and we are consistently amazed at the depth, scope, and rigor of the training that happens and the education that happens in apprenticeship programs. It's amazing. We want to do more of them because we want to get more of those credit recommendations out.
Thanks, Lisa. And just a quick follow-up on that, Valerie's just asked, I think you were just getting into, what exactly is the credit that you're for?
It depends a lot on what we're looking at. For instance, if we're, and I'm going to go back to IBM because I'm familiar with them, but we're looking at, you know, their cybersecurity apprenticeship. They may be receiving credits in various aspects of that cybersecurity world, and they may also be receiving credit recommendations for those other skills. And if you'll bear with me, I could probably pop up the display to show you exactly what that would break out as. Just give me a second here. I think it's just really important that as we're moving forward in this realm, probably more than any other place, that we build out those partnerships with apprenticeship programs, workforce, and higher ed. And it may not always look at, okay, let's just look at this one. They may not always look at, for instance, a particular area in the workforce may not fit a community college program or a 4-year institution, but it does fit a community college program. Or maybe it fits, you know, a VOTEC program or something. Or maybe there's an avenue we haven't even considered yet, which causes the local or the area higher ed institution to say, you know, we might be able to develop a program that will go along with that apprenticeship. There's always that. There are so many possibilities. Let me just show you quickly. I don't want to take up too much time here, but let me just show you quickly an example of one of IBM's. Nope, this one. Have to make sure I get the right screen. Really don't want to see my email. So here's their software engineering apprenticeship. And here are the credit recommendations. So project management, business communications, Here's computer fundamentals and programming, software development, and it will identify all this particular one. There are a couple of upper division here in software engineering, and here is an internship, 9 credits of internship that was given as an upper level. The display will also give you the occupation description, the program description, the objective, all of the learning outcomes, and you can see there are many of them, and some general topics, and it will also tell you the instructional strategies and the methods of assessments that were used in coming to those credit recommendations. So there is a wealth of information on the National Guide, not only for the apprenticeship programs to look at, but also those institutions when they're looking to crosswalk.
Great. That's really useful to see the practical example. Allegra, I want to come back to you. There's been a bit of discussion in the sidebar about I guess different attitudes from higher education institutions. So what I wanted to ask is how do you get across to your faculty, to your administrators, what this kind of non-traditional, slightly new, slightly different form of education and apprenticeship is? How do you manage that sort of new change?
Yeah, and thanks for that question, because this isn't easy, right? So as there has been some communication in the chat, and as we kind of have acknowledged on the call, not every institution approaches this work from the same lens or from the same perspective, and oftentimes it is the faculty that are resistant to this, either as change because they have not done it before, or there is some skepticism about the foundations on which such a program is built. My recommendation for folks either approaching a higher education institution from the outside, or if there are any higher education folks here kind of sending out smoke signals from the inside, is really to bring faculty as close as possible to this work so they can see firsthand the rigor and comprehensive nature of this program that Lisa described. When we have had faculty on our virtual campus who have been like, well, I don't know, I don't know about this whole thing. We say, come on with us. And AC, he has a lot of material on their website that can help give faculty a perspective on the process that is used, how everything goes through so many checks and balances, how everything is by consensus, how it's the right people making those decisions. And what we've also done is we've encouraged our faculty to become ACE evaluators themselves if they really want to dig into this, if they really want to know what's going on, behind that curtain, go on and find out for yourself. Spend some time as an evaluator, and they always come back refreshed and rejuvenated because they know firsthand now how much work goes into establishing these recommendations in the first place. And then that also creates, from the higher education perspective, some connective tissue to utilize those recommendations, which is a word I use a lot when I'm giving presentations about credit for prior learning. It's not just oh, we accept these credits, or we see you, yep, those are there. It is, how are we using them to help apprentices reach the finish line, which is not the same thing as saying we accept them, because sometimes that acceptance is really kind of like, well, you have some free electives, we'll put it over there. I mean, you saw what Lisa pulled up for IBM. Those students should be getting credit for intro to networking, intro to programming, cybersecurity basics. They should be getting credit for those courses. And so there's really this push and pull. And I have found that the best way to tackle it is just to bring those skeptics or those newcomers to the space as close as possible, because once they pop the hood and they really see what's going on, I have found that most people are like, oh, I had no idea there was this entire machine operating so effectively behind the scenes. And sometimes it's just a little bit of ignorance, and we can brush that up with some additional information to fill in the gaps and get them on board.
Thanks, Allegra. That's a great point. It's not about acceptance. It's about how do we get people actually using the stuff, living it. Brandy, I want to ask about implementation from IBM's perspective. So going through this process and getting the learning evaluations, what did you find surprising? What did you find challenging?
That's a good question. Lisa mentioned earlier, we were part of the pilot, so it was fairly new, I think, to both IBM and ACE. So from our perspective, taking on the ACE learning evaluation process was a mix of thrill, nervousness, and butterflies. On one hand, we were super excited. We were excited to be part of this pilot. We were excited to work with ACE on our program. We really didn't know what to expect, to be honest with you. But if you think about it, we were giving our apprentices a chance to snag college credit recommendations for the hands-on skills that they were learning on the job. So all in all, it was kind of a no-brainer for us to want to be part of the pilot. But there was a little bit of nervous energy. Like I said, we had never done this before. Mapping our apprenticeship roles to college level competencies, we never even thought about doing that, to be honest with you. And so we were kind of stepping into an unknown territory. But I'll tell you, with the ACE team, it was an amazing experience. We stepped into it, we didn't know what to expect. We were like, well, if we get 12, 15 hours, that will be great. But they really handheld us through the process. They turned the whole thing into a smooth ride. Their guidance on what to expect, giving us some best practices, it really made the whole process seamless. I mean, it made it a lot easier than I think we thought sort of initially stepping into it. And so at the end of the day, they really gave us the confidence that we needed in order to navigate the entire operation. In a nutshell, I guess I'd say it was sort of a wild ride of discovery, learning, and teamwork. The feedback, like Lisa shared earlier, when the ACE evaluations are completed, the faculty is going to tell you, hey, this is what we recognized, and this is maybe where you could do some improvements or some enhancements that you can make in your program. And so that feedback coming from faculty members really helps you to enhance your program, iterate on it, and make it better as you think about the future apprentices that are coming in. And ultimately, like I think I've said earlier, it really took our apprenticeships to the next level, and it helped to really reinforce our dedication to nurturing our future talent.
That's great to hear. And Brandy, just as a follow-up to that, can you share any reflections about the outcomes, about how apprentices are using the credit awarded, anything on the kind of career progression now you've done the legwork, got this up and running?
Yeah, to be honest with you, we have really observed a remarkable impact on both our apprentice engagement and their career progression, like you've mentioned. When we introduced the evaluations, it really boosted their motivation, it really boosted their morale, because now they can see a tangible connection between their work and academic advancement. I mentioned earlier, we surveyed our apprentices, would you be interested in pursuing a degree? And absolutely they were. And we've noticed that a lot of the apprentices who have completed the roles and have benefited from the recommendations have truly shown accelerated growth. And oftentimes now they're in leadership roles within their organizations.
Mhm.
So that direct correlation between apprenticeship and further education really underscores the value of apprenticeship programs. It encourages longer term commitment and really has provided, honestly, loyalty to IBM. And I think Allegra and Lisa both hit it on the head when they said, there are some organizations that have not recognized this. And I will tell you, our apprentices have come to me telling me this. They're like, hey, Brandy, you told me I could take this to my university and they would do this. And that's where, as IBM, we reached out to ACE. They've been an amazing partner for us. We reached out to ACE and said, hey, help us, please. They immediately hopped on the call with us. They had a conversation with us and they said, let us help you. Let's see what we can do. And then we partnered with Purdue Global. And Purdue Global sat down and said, okay, let us look at your software engineering role. How can we align it to, what we have? And they helped us sort of build out that map for our apprentices. And it's really exciting because we actually have apprentices that are enrolled in Purdue Global on track to complete their 4-year degree.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
That's great to hear. I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to open this up to the audience. So please put your hand up to ask a question or make a comment, or just put something in the chat and we'll come to it. I wanted to ask a question about scale. You've got a great model here. How do we scale this up? So Lisa, I'm gonna start with you. Interested in hearing from all of you on this. What are the biggest barriers to getting more people, on both sides of the partnership, aligning apprenticeships and
Oh, he froze. I'm sorry, what was the question? You kind of froze for a second.
Sorry, my internet's a bit dodgy.
That's okay.
What are the barriers to scaling this up? What are the barriers to getting more apprentices receiving college credit?
That's a really good question, because ACE doesn't tend to look at barriers, we look at opportunities. And the opportunity is endless. Now, we do work with state systems, we work with colleges and universities to help them learn how to crosswalk. That's a whole nother area that we work in. And the reason we want to do that is we want more and more of the learners to be able to use that subject specific credit and apply it, move forward much the way they're doing, for instance, at IBM. One of the things that the barriers that I see is just what Brandy was talking about as well, and Allegra also, is the lack of understanding in higher education that leads to we may not want to try that. But what I go back to what I said earlier in the hour, and that is the pendulum is swinging. There are more and more colleges and universities who are looking very closely at what can we do with credit for prior learning to help our learners? How can we apply it at our institution? The other thing that I would encourage everyone to do, not everyone, but those who can, one of the things that really opened an aha moment for me was there was a college in Michigan who surveyed the workforce in the area, surveyed those folks, the businesses and things like that, and said, where are your hard to hire areas? And one of the things that came back was, we really need welders. And so they built a program called Get a Skill, Get a Job. And they sat down with area workforce, identified what they needed, also identified, are there people out there that may have some of those skills, but not all of them? And the military is a perfect example. I'm sure you can find a few welders in the military, but they may only know one kind of welding. So they built a program to recognize the credit for prior learning, slot them in when you need to slot them in, and get them into the workforce. That is a perfect world. So I think, I would love to have, I was a faculty member. I understand when faculty say, yeah, but they didn't take it from me and they didn't take it from our college or university. So how do I know they know what they know? That's where we are trying to be very, very transparent on the ACE guide, the national guide and the military guide, and show it absolutely as much information as we can show so that they can crosswalk that and give that needed credit.
Thanks, Lisa. I think we'd echo that sentiment, that the pendulum is swinging and the momentum is building.
It's swinging. My colleague Jen Kosman just put a resource that is a really good resource in the chat for you about the ACE apprenticeship program, and that may help others on the team as well. So I would encourage you to look at that.
Allegra or Brandy, anything you'd add on what does it take to operationalize this at scale?
Okay, so I was going to jump in and just step on my soapbox for one more opportunity here, because I think there's a philosophical thing that needs to happen, and I like to say that we use the term non-traditional, but these aren't non-traditional learners. It's just perhaps a new tradition or a different tradition
Yes.
or a thing that, like, I know, Harry, from your perspective, internationally, this is not new or different. Sorry, there's a storm. I don't know if you could see the lightning flashing. But this is not like some other thing over here that's odd and strange and we shouldn't think about it and shouldn't worry about it. It's just a new tradition. Just because you didn't drive off to college at 19 years old doesn't mean you aren't intelligent, capable, and destined for great things. So I think that shifting the mindset away from conceiving of this as some other and separate space by doing an apprenticeship, you are a non-traditional student. No, just a different tradition. And I think it's a good one. And I think, to what Lisa said, I think it will become a more valuable tradition as higher education and industry and organizations like ACE continue to work together to make more opportunities.
And I would just add, from an organization perspective, if you have doubts or hesitancy, just do it. At least explore the resources that Lisa and Jennifer has shared in the chat, because honestly, the benefits to your apprentices and your overall program are worth it. You know, it helps to solidify the integrity of your program. Plus, it provides this awesome opportunity for your apprentices to advance their degree, which ultimately can lead to career path growth within your organization. So just do it. And you're in good hands with ACE and Purdue, I promise. Purdue Global.
I love that.
Thank you.
Just do it. I wanted to ask a follow-up that Owen asked a great question earlier that your point reminded me of Allegra, which was, lots of the language and terminology we use for apprenticeships comes from the skilled trades world. Does that create a barrier, for your learners or your faculty? Do we need to think about different terminology?
Yeah, I think sometimes there is a preconceived notion. I know Lisa shared a slide earlier that showed kind of the range of different types of apprenticeship programs that have been reviewed. I think that's part of the re-education that needs to happen around the rigor, the relevance, and really the authenticity of these programs in delivering useful skills, hard skills, soft skills, durable skills, whatever you want to call them. So yeah, I think there's the potential that shifting language around this could avoid some of the predisposed concerns. But perhaps my personality just says we just need to hit that head on and tell people they're wrong in some ways about what they think apprenticeships are. And I think, a slide like Lisa is saying, hey, this is apprenticeship in advanced cybersecurity, folks. And that's not to diminish the corresponding apprenticeship in woodworking and craftsmanship. It's just all in there. Just like you can have a college degree in musicology, or you could have a college degree in engineering. The range is there. I think we just need to get people's heads straight about what's contained in that very valuable container.
Great point. One final question from me, and then we might close out, which is, what advice would you give to practitioners just starting out on this journey? I think we've had Brandy's version of that, which is just do it, just get on with it. Lisa, what would your advice be to employers and higher education partners at the beginning of this journey?
Yeah, beginning on this journey, probably one of the first things that I would do as an apprenticeship program is have it reviewed. Not because I work for ACE, but because that provides the leverage. It's a benefit that I work for ACE, but have it reviewed. And then take that, if they're ready and there are, the faculty comments are wonderful and there really is nothing else they can do and that sort of thing, then, go for it. And seek out those partnerships, seek out those colleges and universities in your area that would be receptive to considering credit for prior learning, and there are more of them. Reach out to places like Purdue Global. I mean, like I said, they've done this for so long, they probably already have a path created. But do a little investigation that way, and then point your apprentices in those directions, give them some guidance, survey them. Do they want to move on? And if they do, where do they want to move on? And those are the supportive things. But ACE has a lot of resources that can help you, and we're always happy to do that. But my first step would be, I've got a comment in here that said I would add to Brady's "just do it" with saying, why not? Absolutely. What have you got to lose? Just do it. Yep.
Great. Allegra, Brandy, any final points to add?
Yeah, I'll go briefly and just say that I work with a lot of military learners who are transitioning from military service to higher education, and they're often very surprised at the amount of advocacy that is necessary in higher education to kind of get the outcome that you want. You ask this person, can I do it? And they say no. Sometimes it's kind of a maybe, not a no. Whereas in the military lens, everything is very, very black and white. Higher education is a land of gray space. So I would just encourage anyone outside or within higher education, ask for receipts when somebody says, oh, we really can't do that. Oh, okay, that's really, unfortunate, but could you give me a little bit more information why? Sometimes folks don't even know their own policies, don't even know their own structures. And I'm not proud to say it, but being honest, higher education is a space where you have to ask, or you often will not receive. And so I think being willing to make it make sense, make sure that those higher education colleagues are making it make sense to you, so that you make sure you get the best benefit for the folks on the line with the apprentice.
Yeah, if I could just add on to that for a minute, I used to tell all of my advisees, don't take their first answer. If you go to the registrar and you get an answer you don't want, go to the department head. If you don't get an answer you want, go to the faculty until you get the answer you want. Because everybody it's a learning curve. Not as much as it was years ago, but there are more and more shifting now towards recognizing that credit for prior learning. It's a wonderful opportunity for your apprentices.
Great points. I love the determination and the optimism. We're just about at time here, so I'm gonna close us out. So I just want to say a quick thank you to Elisa, Allegra, and Brandy for spending your time and sharing your experiences. It's really helpful to hear the kind of nitty gritty of how you've managed to do this and build such successful programs. And I'm sure people learned a lot from it. We'll be sharing out the recording of this and the slides, and we'll share some of ACE's resources with that as well. If you have any questions, please do get in touch with us and Lisa and Jen as well. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming. I hope it's been useful.
Well, thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.